Good evening and welcome to the Pollock Theater. My name is Emily Zinn and I'm the Associate Director of the Carsey-Wolf Center, which sponsors the programming at the Pollock Theater. And it's my great pleasure to welcome to the Pollock Sarah Olson, who is the producer of Knock Down the House, and Cori Bush, who is candidate. Cori Bush, who you've just seen in Knock Down the House, and who is currently a candidate for Missouri's 1st congressional district. So thank you, ladies, for joining us. So I'm going to ask Sarah and Cori a few questions, and then we'll have some time to turn to the audience for a few questions as well. So I want to start first with you, Sarah. Can you talk to us a little bit about the genesis of this film and your involvement with it? How did you and your collaborators decide on this particular story, and at what point did you get involved in the project?
Sure. So the project kind of began to develop just after the election in 2016. And Rachel Lear's the director, and Robin Blotnick, who is the editor, their husband and wife team. And they had finished a previous documentary called The Hand That Feeds, that is a political documentary as well. It's about a deli in New York where the undocumented immigrants that worked in the deli organized into a union. Okay. And it's a really incredible film if you haven't seen it. And so Rachel and Robin had just come off the heels of that, had decided they didn't want to do another political film, and then the election happened. And they decided, okay, we have to do a political film. At that time, Justice Democrats and brand new Congress had already formed and were beginning to source candidates. And so they created a relationship immediately with them to watch this process and see what types of candidates were coming this way, and they, fairly quickly selected the 4 that you see here, and we did only follow these 4. We didn't have others that didn't end up making it in, and I came into the project when I saw a post in a very random Facebook group that Rachel put on looking for an audio person in West Virginia to go shoot with Paula Jean. And this was way before the primaries. They had not launched a Kickstarter. They had no funding yet for the project. And I saw a little piece they had cut of each of the women. And my 2 previous features, Tapped and Fed Up, I saw how significant the effect of corporate PAC money and lobbying dollars have on every aspect of our everyday lives. And so when I saw that these brave women were willing to run for office while not taking corporate PAC dollars, so then they can own their own votes when they get to office, if they get there, I was, that's what moved me. So I reached out to Rachel right away. I introduced myself. And we kept in touch, and over the next couple of months, as they had some funding come in and a successful Kickstarter, then I came on board.
Excellent. Well, turning to Cori, I want to know a little bit more about why you decided to run for Congress. We've just seen in the film how affected you were by the murder of Michael Brown and the aftermath of that event. But I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about why you felt this was the best way for you to serve your community at this point.
Sure. First of all, hello everybody, and thank you for being here. You could be so many other places besides coming to talk with us, and it's on Netflix, so you could have done that. So thank you. Just being on the ground in Ferguson during the uprising. Just regular everyday people that didn't know before August 9th that August 9th was going to happen, that just showed up because this body of this 18-year-old baby was laying, and I'm calling a baby, I have a 19-year-old, so I'm calling the person a baby, even though you're not, but just the image of this 18-year-old slumped over on the ground. St. Louis gets hot. We get really, really cold and really, really hot. It was like 100 degrees, and this body is laying on the ground for 4.5 hours, you know, and just the idea of that in my own neighborhood. And so anyway, just being out there, just going out, trying to see what justice is, see if we can get justice for this child and for this family, for this person and this family. And the fact that there was no day before playbook, like there was no instruction book that said, hey, if this happens in your community, this is what you do. And this is, if you're a baker, you do this. If you're a teacher, you do this. If you're, you know, like none of that happened. And so just regular everyday folks just ran out to be out there on the ground, and we expressed our anger the way that we chose to express it. And we put our lives on the line every single day. The tear gas, the bullets, whether they were rubber bullets or real bullets, all the death threats, everything that we went through, the dogs. When we saw that the people that are paid to represent us were not showing up, were leaving us out there, constituents out there, risking their lives, and they would only show up for a photo op. That's when we knew we had to do something. And so when someone asked me to run, initially I was like, no, why would I want to run for office? But just the thought of the only way to get that same heart, that same passion for the community that I saw out there on the ground, the same people that I saw hung upside down, hung upside down off of a baton, beaten unconscious, that didn't do anything wrong. The same people that I saw hurt, but will turn around and come right back out there every day. That needed to be in Congress. You know, I felt like just loving humanity should be like a prerequisite for that seat. And so it was like, okay, the only way to do it is to just go run. And so, and then also the idea about my children, just knowing that just by being out there, like maybe with all that we did, not only in Ferguson, but how that touched all across the world, not only this country, but the world, maybe, just maybe we saved one life. Regular everyday folks that had no money, we were sharing a tampon box, like on the street, like regular everyday folks, maybe we saved one life. And so that is why I had to run.
That is amazing. And I'm so impressed. I'm so impressed with how you have channeled such a horrific experience into something so positive and so powerful as your campaign. So thank you for that. So tell me about how you ended up getting involved in the film. Yeah. At what point in your campaign did the filmmakers approach you?
So I ran for U.S. Senate. That was my very first run. Straight out the gate, when I got the call to run for office, they were like, you got to run for U.S. Senate. I'm like, what? Like, that was just, it was nuts. And actually, the person that asked me to run initially, that person is an activist out of, I believe, North Carolina, and he was murdered. Oh. Yeah. And I knew that even though my first run wasn't successful as far as me taking the seat, the conversation changed. I wanted to make sure the conversation was there about racial inequality, about wage inequality, about criminal justice reform, police accountability, and just so many other areas. And I saw that by showing up, by using my voice, by not being afraid to go into places where they said, you Black, you can't come here, this is a sundown town and all of that. Like, just by showing up, by being there, the conversations changed, and Missouri changed a lot just by a person being willing to put themselves out there. So when it came time to run for Congress, someone asked me. I said no, but then I thought about it again and decided to do it. So someone from Brand New Congress reached out to me early on, maybe a year before, 9 months before, just letting me know, hey, we're doing this pilot program, want to see how it goes. We want to start in Ferguson with you. And they said, if you choose to run, we want you to be a candidate. Okay, fine. So when the time came and I made the decision to run, I went to a summit. It was the very first Brand New Congress summit that you all saw in the film, where we were all like at a round table. So it was that weekend, and just someone said like, okay, there's this lady named Rachel that has the camera, and she wants to just like interview you all. And you'll just go upstairs and it was like casual like that. You'll just go upstairs and she's just going to interview you. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Sure. I've done hundreds of interviews, like from Ferguson, like there was always a camera in our faces. People were always following us. People were recording us when we didn't know it. So it was like, to me, it was no big deal. But then when she came back and said, well, you know, I'm doing this documentary, and, you know, I think I want to focus on, you know, blah, blah, blah. Would you want to be a part of it? And because of just like being in front of cameras for such a long time, at that point, I was like, okay, like there was no like, it was just kind of like, wow. There was a part of me that was like, why would anybody care about me running for this seat? Like, I'm glad she wants to, like, you know, film it, but like, nobody's gonna care, you know. So that's.
And then look what happened. So, in the process of filming, did you have contact with the other 3 documentary subjects?
Sure, so before the film, before any filming. As soon as we met, we stayed in contact. So the way that Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats is set up, they want to make sure that you are candidate ready, you know, so they put you through trainings. We do webinars together. We do a lot of like Zoom calls and stuff like that, just working on policy and even with that summit. So we stayed chats and calls and all of that. So we were like forming friendships, you know, already.
We're all in boot camp together.
Exactly, you know, and it was definitely like a boot camp.
It's such a special part of seeing them together, because they really did support each other all along the way. You know, they're very tight, and it's you know, it's how it was possible. I mean, when you have people coming into a race like this without name recognition, without the political background you're expecting, you know, one of the biggest ways they were able to kind of trump all of that was working together.
Yes.
This movement rather than one person.
Yeah, and we were all like just, again, regular people that just decided to run for office. Nobody was like up here and people were down here. It was just like, you know, I don't know anything, you don't know anything, let's not know anything together, you know. And so we were all just like scratching our way, you know, and then Rachel filmed it.
And there it is, yeah. And what do you think are the key issues that were driving that wave of insurgent candidates? What were the really key issues animating all of you?
Definitely getting big money out of politics, just a huge one, just so that everybody can have a voice. Representation, we believe that everybody should be represented in Congress, that Congress should just look and be just as diverse as the country is. Also just making sure that people have access to health care. Like health care shouldn't be just because you can afford it that you have access to it. So those things, education, making sure that everybody has access to education, good quality education, but also not being burdened with the debt afterwards. For so many of us, those are things that we went through ourselves. And so it's like, I went through that, I carried that burden, I don't want anybody else to do it, you know, like even for me, a lot of those things are things that I went through myself. And so not only did I hear other people talk about it, but I could speak to it myself. So it was very personal for many of us.
Of course. Well, a slight change of gears back to the sort of mechanics of the film. Sarah, what I was very impressed with in watching this film was the way that you as filmmakers created this sense of real intimacy with the candidates, that I felt like they could be, you know, my relatives or my friends or myself. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you as documentarians create that sense of intimacy with your subjects.
It's so important, you know, it's how you can really feel like you're a part of that intimate space with them, and that it's genuine and really authentic. In this case, one of the things that really, I think probably one of the biggest things that created that feeling was Rachel, the director, was also the DP. So she was a one-woman band for much of the filming. Occasionally we would hire sound. Very rarely we had a second camera, but most of the time it was just her.
So explain for those who might not know, what does it mean that she was the DP?
So she had the whole camera rig herself. So she did all of the shooting, and she was in, there's a lot of tight spaces. You saw a lot of cars, New York City apartments, a lot of small spaces. And so to have only one person makes it much,
right in there.
It just makes it much easier to kind of blend into the background and have not be so burdensome to the feeling of the room. And so Rachel did a really great job with that. And, and these women were really powerful in how, they didn't put a lot of boundaries. Oh, we're not going to talk about that. No, we can't film that. No, we're not going to do that. I mean, they really said, if we're going to do this, we're all in. This is a movement. And, this was an opportunity to really demonstrate how, the power to organizing and the power to a movement like this. And so they were really open to it and have continued really supporting the film and supporting the movement and working with us on the release. So we've been very fortunate that everybody's been really supportive of the release. It's, that's a terrifying thing to offer up your life to a screen like that and not know how you'll be how you'll be edited.
Right.
And in this case,
those four amazing subjects.
We took, we take that responsibility extremely carefully and seriously. And in all the cases of both Rachel and Robin and myself, and I would add too that for me in prior projects, a small team would be 5, 6, 7, 8 people. But in this case, the majority of the film was just Rachel, Robin, and I. And prior to me coming on, just Rachel and Robin. So we were a very, very small team. And for all of us in our previous projects, we had been able to demonstrate, I think, that we take that responsibility seriously. We would never want to lose that trust.
Right. So that in building that relationship with your subjects, and it really shows on the screen.
Absolutely.
So Cori, building off that, I want to know a little bit about the experience of being the subject of a documentary. You say, I was so used to being filmed at a certain point, but it does seem in the film like you've got a very specific way you're presenting yourself. We don't, with Alexandria, we saw a lot more of like her family and her boyfriend and her house and her makeup, and we got a slightly different presentation of you. So how much of that was what you wanted to give to the filmmakers? How much of that was the editing? Can you talk a little bit about being the subject?
Sure. So part of the so I think part of it is because of funding. So we ran into several issues with that because Alexandria's prominent in the film not because she won, but because Rachel was in New York, and so she had access to her. And there were times Rachel would call and say, "I want to come to St. Louis. You're having this and you're doing that, but we just don't have the money." And so we were trying to work on how to get her here, to get her to St. Louis, and so that's what the issue was. So she filmed. She was able to come to St. Louis when she had the money,
right?
And so that she was able to get what she could get. So that's and the same thing with Amy, and the same thing with Paula. But I think that as far as what did make it into the film, some of the things that I did talk about are the issues that I really wanted people to know, and those are the things that are different, like with Paula, different with Amy. I think that was the way that you all put that together, how you made sure that it's all interconnected, but those things aren't redundant, right. So those themes. And for me, it's very I have to make sure that people understand why the heck am I in this film if I won't talk about the experience of being a Black woman in politics or a Black woman in America? I have to talk about that because before I'm a woman, I'm Black, and not only am I Black, I'm a dark-skinned Black woman, so that's a whole other thing, and so I have to talk about it. I talk about how people would rather talk to me about my hips than hear about my policy. Like that was a whole thing on Twitter. Like it was like articles about my hips, you know. It really was, like, it was crazy. Chelsea Handler had to say something about it. It was, you know, it's crazy. And, you know, people talked about my hair, you know, and how, you know, unprofessional my braids are and all of that. Like in the movie, you get to see like all the many hairstyles of Cori, you know. I just, you know, because I just like to do it right. Y'all do different things with my hair, you know, but that was an issue. And it's like, ooh, you know, or, you know, you can't wear certain things, you know. It's like, well, why? So those things had to be talked about because that was very real. And what we would hear about the way that we were dressed and all of that, like so not only do I have to study and make sure that I'm tight on my policy and make sure that I show up, make sure that I do all of the things that other politicians have to do, but I also have to make sure that I'm palatable enough, you know, not only in my speech, but in my presentation, that my hips don't look too big, that my lipstick isn't too, you know, I guess, you know, whatever makes me look sexy or whatever. They're like all of those things, and that my hair is professional and my nails are this, like, can't look ghetto. You know, they would say you got ghetto nails and all of that. Like all of that stuff was very real. But then when you talk about a man, you know, do you all hear that when you know, any of that kind of stuff? You do, you know, and so that was, you know, something that I really wanted to have people to really think about.
And that comes across so well in the film, that this is a set of constraints that you have that other candidates don't have, that your opponent doesn't have.
Yeah. I remember even having taking photos, and I would hear, maybe you should move out of the photo because you're too dark.
Ouch.
Yeah, you know, I would mess up the photo because, you know, my complexion. So yeah, but running for office, it's like freaking, this is the United States of America. I thought we had better technology.
Right. Well, since we talked for a minute about your opponent, let's go there for a minute. What is it like to take on a political dynasty like the Clay family? You know, you have your opponent. Unlike Alexandra's opponent, who does appear in the film, your opponent only appears for just a minute, but you get other people saying, well, you know, it's just automatic. Of course, we're going to vote for the Clay family. So what's it like to take on a dynasty like that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember your mission. You have to know why you're running, because especially like for me, I was a black woman running against a black man. Right. So then it's like, why would you do that? You know, at least we have representation. No, we don't have representation because for 171 years, there's never been a woman in this seat, this particular seat, and there's never been a black woman in our whole state, in the history of our state, in Congress. So no, that is not representation. No. And then, so it was like fighting against people who you're fighting for. Right. Every day. That's what it was like. It was like I had to make sure people understood that there is so much more to having a congressperson, and that was something that people just didn't know. Like people were, oh, well, this person is not too bad. You know, it's like there are no major scandals and, you know, and all of that. So I think it's okay. People would say the devil I know is better than the devil I don't. Like I would hear that. And I was like, why is the bar so low? Yeah. You know, not only that, check other districts and see what other communities are doing and what they get. You know, we have a whole part of St. Louis where it looks like a bomb dropped, like the north side of St. Louis. It's horrible. 1,700 vacant homes, they're owned by one person. It's like, and so anyway, so those were the things that I was trying to, I had to get the community to understand. But I'll tell you, running against somebody who is established only by name for the most part, it was like you are a traitor. And because that person, you know, I was running as a Dem, you are a traitor to your party. And that's what they would call us. Not only me, but the others. And we were traitors. Right. But knowing that the reason why I was running was more important, and knowing that what I could do, you could be mad at me today, but let me get in that office, you'll be happy about what I did for you. So that's all let
me represent you.
You'll like the representation.
Well, so Sarah, let's talk a little bit about your role in this film. So we have a lot of students who are aspiring to work in the entertainment industry in various ways. And I know the job of a producer can be a lot of different things. So can you talk a little bit about your role in this film and what your day-to-day responsibilities might have been like?
Yeah, the role of a producer is always different. It depends on the project, but you should assume that you're responsible for everything and anything. And, it is like, especially in this particular project, I didn't run, well, we did try to get interviews with, all of the candidates that they were opposing, and all of those interviews were turned down. So,
Yeah, I love that note in the credits. The following individuals.
Typically as a producer, you're doing a lot of chasing down of interview subjects. You're always, you want to tell a balanced story, and
Sure.
and it's a really lucky moment when you can have both parties and get both sides, and also a very rare moment. And so, as a producer, I mean, you're doing that. I'm helping to manage the shoots and organizing ahead because we only had one team, part of, there was a lot of thought going into selecting the 4 candidates that we did have. And that was, geographically, they were very diverse. The diversity of issues, and that's what Cori was referring to. They were all really interesting people in their own right, and they were compelling to watch. And
each have their own story.
And they each have their own story, but also because we were so tight on funding all along the way, they also had to have primaries on different dates. So we never had 2 primaries going on at the same time. So typically, if Rachel was working on one, I was working on another. So I would be working ahead on one while she was working, maybe shooting another. And that's kind of how we always worked. And, when I first came on, like I said, Paula Jean's primary had just happened. I think I came on maybe the day after her primary or the week after. And so Cori, Amy, and Alexandria's primaries were still to come. Alexandria's was next, and it was a lot of that, wrangling what are we looking for, what's going to be happening, how do we plan ahead, and we're not trying to tell a certain story. We're trying to show the reality of their story
and be present when those moments are happening. It
so
sounds like a puzzle.
It requires a lot of flexibility, last moment changes. And that's certainly something I play a big role in. And then, of course, when you get to post-production, and then there's, raising money and doing all of that, which is a very big job for films in general. And then in post-production, everything starts all over. You have a lot to do in terms of, the figuring out the music, licensing the music. And then helping out, depending on the project. Sometimes the producer has a more creative role as well, in story too. So that was a really exciting thing. We worked with an incredible supervising editor on this project too. His name is David Teague. And it was just a really amazing opportunity to work with Robin and Rachel and David and craft the story together.
Yeah, I was interested in that in terms of the structure of the film, because you've got these 4 very different stories and you have to fit them together sort of like a puzzle. And I know there are some places where you have to kind of change the timeline a little bit, right? That,
yes.
Cori's primary came after Alexandria's primary, but in order to tell the story, you're telling, you move one thing to a different spot. Are there other places where you had to make big choices about structure that you might want to talk about?
Oh my goodness. Well, the final version that we screened at Sundance, and this version is only slightly different from that. There was probably 12 versions before that. So, we had a lot of structural changes along the way. And, the key was we really wanted to be able to highlight so clearly the personal stories of each of the women and what brought them to this place in their life. And, we knew going into this, there was a very good chance, probably a better chance, certainly a better chance than not, that all 4 could lose.
Right.
And, as a filmmaker, we had to have conversations about that.
Right.
What does that look like, and what will we do if that happens? And you know, I think that Rachel did a fantastic job in selecting these 4 women to follow because they are so compelling.
Right. Even if all 4 of them lost, it still would have been an amazing story.
And you know, and the truth is, you know, I believe it's a much more powerful story because they didn't all 4 win. Because, you know, the reality is that you know, what Alexandria says is true. For 1 to get through, 100 have to try.
Right.
And, you know, that is the reality of the situation. But with this movement that I think that you guys are building and continues to be built right now, brand new Congress has a whole new slate of candidates, and they are supporting them. Paula Jean is running for Senate again. She is running against a Republican. She's not running against Joe Manchin again. Cori's obviously running.
Yeah.
And Amy, we certainly have not seen the last of running for office, but she's not currently running. She's working on Bernie Sanders' campaign in Nevada, and Cori and Amy are doing a ton of work for the film, and really, it's been amazing. You know, tomorrow Cori's going to speak to 5,000 high school girls on behalf of Knock Down the House. Yeah.
She's not sitting idle.
No.
So Cori, let's talk a little bit about you being a second-time candidate now. I'm wondering, you know, if it's significantly different running for a second time, and if things are different because of the film.
Yes, so it's different because I know more. You know, I know the ugly to expect, and I also know how good it can be, you know, as far as the support, you know, because you have to have, like, that to me is one of the ways that we stay in this, is not only just remembering our mission, but having people that support us, whether it's our team or just people in the community, people on social media.
And you're continuing to build on that base of support you've got. Yeah.
Absolutely. The film has done wonders for us as far as support, not just locally, but across the country and across the world. Just getting messages. I get messages from people in places I don't even know. Like, I have to look up where this place is. You know, I have to Google it because honestly, like, it's places I didn't even know the film would be. Like, it's and they're saying, you know, you all inspired me to run for office, or I connected with this part of the movie. I had one person. There was this father who has a 5-month-old baby, and he tweeted to us, and he said that he watched the movie and it inspired him so much that he made his 5-month-old watch it. And so he sent us a picture. He sent us a picture holding the baby up to the screen. So that is what's different for me. Just feeling like, you know, now this thing is really bigger than me. It's bigger than any of us. It is like, when you stop, if you choose to stop, who do you affect in that? You know, how, you know, so many people are paying attention and so many people are looking for that hope, you know? So if you can just continue on, today I don't want to do it. Today I'm tired of the Fox News talking about me. I'm tired of, you know, people saying that I didn't do this right, or I didn't say this, or I didn't, you know, it's always something wrong, you know? But why do I stay in this? I stay in it because I know that I can make real change if I continue to step forward. Because when I think about some of the things that I'm a survivor of sexual assault and domestic violence, and I think about all the people who want to speak out about those issues, but they can't, they're not ready, you know, or they just don't want to, period, which is fine, that's their choice. But if I can, then I need to use my voice and use my platform. Yeah. So that's what I look at running again. Also just
there's so many overlapping groups.
So many. And then just running again, I have people who have said, okay, now we know you're serious, you know? So like before we weren't gonna, you know, step over the incumbent because like we weren't sure about if you were really in this thing or not. But now that you're coming back again, like who does that, you know? And so it's just a lot more support.
Yeah, that's great. Well, and I'm wondering too about, you know, the film was shot in 2018. We're now coming up on 2020. What's different about the political landscape now? How is this moment different coming into this election? This can be for either of you, but.
Well, I mean, I think that this
Where
is
do you start?
obviously an incredibly important moment in our political history, and this movement of building a path to power for working class people, I think, has really begun to inspire people to become civically engaged who otherwise had not been.
Yes.
And for Rachel and Robin and I, we all came from a place where we work in docs because we want to start hard conversations. We want to open people's eyes to maybe another side they hadn't thought about. And this film, has that opportunity in such a significant way right now. I feel like the fact that you have, we've had 18-year-olds coming up to us at lots of screenings and saying, I never thought about going into politics, but now I think I'm going to change what I want to do. And then you also have 60-year-olds saying, I don't know, I never thought about running for office, but maybe it's something I could. And I think more participation is what we need. This is a democracy. So when Cori said, running against an incumbent like she was, especially the 50-year dynasty of this father and son, she's treated like a traitor to the Democratic Party in St. Louis. But the reality is that is what democracy is.
Right.
We challenge those in office, and I think that we're in a moment where I think people are getting more involved, and if they don't want to run for office, they're going to support someone else. Or in this case, they came up with this. They really, one thing I really love about the movement, and I know Bernie Sanders was kind of the correct me if I'm wrong, kind of the father of doing this, is, they were phone banking all over the country for different races. So they're helping each other out. You don't have to be, it used to be if you wanted to help a candidate in St. Louis, you had to live in St. Louis and you make your calls there and you go knock on doors, but it's just not like that anymore. You can volunteer for any campaign anywhere in the country if you just want to get involved.
So that nationalizing of
I
these
think,
races.
I think it's a really important moment, and I hope that 5 years from now we'll see that this moment has created a real wave of change, of new candidates popping up all the time, and not ending up with somebody in office for 50 years.
Absolutely, and I think it'll help get us closer to parity. It'll help because the amount of women we have in serving in Congress right now, we can do better. We can absolutely do better, and we can do better making sure that it's educators and bank tellers and and just any people from all
Nurses.
walks of life, nurses, and not a bunch of attorneys.
Nice. All right, one last question then. Cori, advice you would have for aspiring first-time political candidates?
Ooh.
Good one.
Yeah. So know your mission, know why you want to run. That is the biggest thing. Know it, understand it, eat it, chew it, spit it out, take it back again. Because in those hard days, like I said, that's what will keep you going. But also know when. Know when is it time for you to run, because knowing you want to run for something, that does not necessarily mean that it's time. It's okay to go and get training, do candidate trainings. If you seek out candidate trainings, pay attention to what they're training, how much they're charging for these trainings, who's gone through that training, what they did with that information. Seek out trainings that may be specifically for you, like if you are of a particular religion, or if you're a particular, race or whatever it is, look at those too, because that's going to give you some extra things that you may not have in just a regular mainstream candidate training. And then one thing that is really big, it seems small, but it's big, go to your network first, early. Go to your network, meaning your family, your closest friends, and then, then your, the next group of people in your life, and then, branch it out. But go to them and tell them that what you want to do, when it's time for you to do it. Don't talk about it before that, I don't think. But when you're ready, go to them and let them know what you want to do, and find out early who's going to support you. Mm-hmm. Because that's something that can trip people up, is you think that, well, I have this amazing group of friends and we do everything together. We're always there for one another. And then when you try to do this work, people turn on you. They'll back up. Your family, you think that your family is with you, and then your family won't be with you. And so that can be crushing, in the middle of trying to run a campaign. Or when you look up at the end and you're like, oh, they're going to support me. And then when the end comes and you need 1,000 people knocking doors and your family and your friends are nowhere around. Mm-hmm. And then when the ones that say yes, ask them for $50. Okay, so to get you started, you need that start money. Ask each one of them, you support me, give me $50 today. So those are just a few of the things that and then know what you want to run for. Like don't run for something that you wouldn't want to do. Like some people do that. See what that job actually, what it means and how much it pays and all of that, and make sure that's what you really want to do. Right now, I'm actually worried that, and I have to say this one thing with the film, is that it has ignited everybody so many people to want to run for Congress. And I just hope that the people that are saying that they want to run for Congress are wanting to do it for the right reasons. Right. And not because right now it's this popular thing and you have these groups, Brand New Congress and Just the Democrats and all of this stuff going on. And it's this fire right now, this momentum. We need good people in office that are going to do great work, that are willing to stand in the midst of adversity and stand when everything is crashing around you. Like me, when you come home, when you're running for office, and I had a day where I wrote the check for the rent for the campaign office, but I didn't have my own rent for my home. That's a crushing feeling when you're I don't know how I'm going to keep. I'm hoping I don't get evicted next week, but I got a campaign office, right. And so that, it's very real. And so when you go through that, just knowing that so just make sure that it's for the right reason.
That you're ready to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh. Thank you very much, Sarah and Cori, for joining us. This was a wonderful evening, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for